Good evening to everybody. This is our Assessor Facilitation and Moderation Learning Program. However, we are doing the first component of Assessor, literally. We have been doing this program literally from Tuesday up until today. We are breaking off today. As soon as this session has ended, we're going to pause and then we shall commence again next week, Tuesday. Same time, same link. Tonight, we are going to demonstrate further into details of understanding the assessment practices. Now, yesterday we had a very interesting session where we demonstrated some aspects of learning program design, the learning program metrics, notional hour metrics, and as well as the unpacking of a qualification. Today, we are going to go deeper to understand the assessment practices in details, looking at the concepts related to assessment, the RPL, as well as the assessment principles and the approaches to assessment. Then we shall also look at the compilation of the required documentations that you need for you to be declared competent. I remain your one and only Yusuf Nsamba, your facilitator and the assessor of the assessment practices from BBT Institute, as well as Cityside Vocational. So you can find me in those two institutions. Also, should you need support in terms of assessment practices and policy development within your organization, please reach out to us as an institute. We do give extra support. Those who are looking to get themselves accredited as training providers, acquisition of learning materials which is aligned and registered or have been approved by the quality councils, please also reach out to me. I'll be able to guide and support you in that regard. I know I've got a lot of individuals here tonight that I'm seeing for the first time, literally. So bear with us, please. If you are joining us tonight, you might have missed out a lot of information, and the classes are all fully recorded. For learning purposes, visit our YouTube channel under the private assessment folder. You'll be able to download some of those key courses or records that we have put up for you. Alternatively, you can visit the entire classroom sessions by logging into your portal. That is the assessor portal that you have for BBT Institute. Our LMS has got a full integrated learning portal where you can be able to enter and access some of the resources that you need, more especially the videos, full packaged videos for every class that we have given out on assessment from Tuesday to date. These classes are readily available. You can access, download, and listen or watch the video. You can be able to impart yourself. For those individuals who are struggling, I mean, you have registered the program, but you are quite busy, you don't have time. Please, the only way for you to complete this program is to reserve some time, some specific amount of time for a class, or to attempt to answer some of the assessments that have been allocated. Otherwise, you'll never finish. We've got students that have enrolled in January, but they never did anything simply because they do not prioritize this program as an essential program in their operations. I've been discussing now and then the importance of being an assessor. Visit our last video for yesterday and Tuesday. You'll be able to get a full understanding. As well, if you want to read more about the benefits of being an assessor or a registered consultant assessor, and well as a registered quality practitioner with the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations and any other quality councils, please see our news feeder onto the portal. We've got lots of information there that is being pasted, and then for you to be able to download and access this information for your own benefit. You can see where you can be able to operate and how you can expand your scope in terms of facilitation, assessment, and moderation practices. The introduction being done, I want to get down onto the business of today. First, I want to welcome and recognize Mr. Tebe. You're welcome tonight. Thank you for joining. In other words, we have been just chatting on the phone, but I know you're a very busy man. Create some time. Time is part of assessment. Create some time, please, to complete the program. Otherwise, you need to exit this program long time ago. You actually, before all the other participants here, you registered first. You're still in the same class, so you need to exit, sir. Remember, if you do not submit and exit the program within a given period of time, we only have 4 weeks for every program to be exited. For every program to be completely exited and certificated, you only have 4 weeks. In other words, the first week we do the first program, you get your exit report, and then you be certificated. You get your statement of results, you get your certificate. Then you approach the second one. So we try to do it in such a way that even if you fail one way or another, you are unable to at least you have completed one set of the unit standards. Done and dusted, then you can be able to move. Maybe in future you want to carry on to complete the rest of the pending unit standards. It makes more easy for you, and your approach to facilitation becomes more easy, because then you have acquired at least 1 or 2 of those unit standards. We are going to unpack tonight the principles of assessment, and I just want to make this clear. Adria, you are welcome. I've not seen you in such a long time. I just see Christine here. I've not seen you in such a long time. I don't know whether you're supposed to be in this class. Please, if this is your right class to be in, please just give me a thumbs up. Then I can know. Otherwise, I need to direct you to the right class. I've been removing some individuals here who are not supposed to be part of the group. I don't want to mix up people who have just, who are maybe into moderations, and then they find themselves attending this class, or people who have not, been assigned any facilitator. Then you find yourself in this general class. So I want to be sure that you are in the right class. I've seen most of you have been here. Only I didn't see Adria. I don't know whether you're supposed to be in this class. If you're supposed to be in this class, I don't know the names, simply because I'm just reading onto my screen what you have saved as your computer name, or the name of your Google Meet. So that's what I'm reading. I might not read it or pronounce it correctly. Please bear with me. Nevertheless, we are going to proceed with our assessment practices. Remember, we said for you to become a competent facilitator, for you to facilitate, you need to be an assessor who has completed the learning program. We have completed the learning program in assessment. So for you to facilitate, you need to be able to I need to connect to the other gadget as well, so that we become connected with multiple devices. Otherwise the network might not disturb us. However, okay, the reason why we started with assessment is to make sure that when you enter into the facilitation learning program, you won't have challenges or difficulties in completing that program. All right. Why? Because assessment cut cross in all the unit standards. For you to be a prominent, a good facilitator, you need to know how to design some of the assessment instruments that you use during the learning process. More especially, we know the formative assessments are done during the facilitation sessions, right? Formatively, a facilitator will be able to give out certain key assessments like practicals or technicals or assignments or case studies or individual activities or group work or role play. All those things that you are doing in class actually form part of the assessment called formative. So a facilitator must be able to know how to design and develop those assessments and how to use them appropriately. The tools might be given to you, maybe a design of a program, you purchase the material somewhere else, and then all these things have been given to you. You have got the facilitation guide, the learner guide, and the instrument, but you are unable to utilize and facilitate efficiently. So your effective facilitation can only happen or be fine if you know how to conduct assessment. That's why we said ideally you're supposed to do facilitation, but for the effectiveness of the facilitation, you need to understand the concept of assessment. Hence, we say assessment is key and it is a building block for any other program that you might intend to take. Tonight, we are going to go further and read or understand more onto this concept, like what is called recognition of prior learning. Now, there are some individuals who are here and you know the concept already. It is happening and you are utilizing it. The RPL is something that you as an assessor need to know. Why are we talking about RPL? The recognition of prior learning is for you to understand and be able to design instruments that are going to incorporate individuals with prior experience. So some people might have entered into a learning program, but you find that whatever you're going to talk about, they already know. They've been practicing it. The only thing that they don't have is the formal qualification to prove that they know whatever is being taught in class. So for you to avoid repetition, we call it the repeatability, concept, that you need to take these individuals into the RPL process. So recognition of prior learning is very key importance in assessment practices, because you are able to score individuals based on to the knowledge that they have acquired prior to whatever you are going to facilitate or assess on. That's what we call RPL. And this is very important in designing assessment or learning outcomes. Why? Because you are able to group individuals based onto their understanding. I think you used to know in olden days, in normal school environment, there used to be classes that are graded from A, B, C, D, and then they score them based on to the levels of attainmency or the levels of knowledge that those individual learners do have, or we call them somewhere bright, somewhere very clever, or whatever case might be. Those concepts of separating individuals rather than putting them into one class. So in this sense, for you to avoid making some groups to be more of your priority and others are being dragged or left behind, we use the concept of RPL to bring everybody onto the same level of attainment. Okay, so should you be called to be an assessor and you're going to conduct assessment, but only to find that you need to do what is called a pre-assessment check, or a pre-assessment verification, then that's where you're able to pick up before you even try to design the instruments or the questions and all that. You get to know the prior knowledge based on to the individuals who are the target group. What other knowledge do they have? Sometimes we seek their qualifications, or we go deeper to understand their experience, looking at their CV that have been submitted, or looking at the knowledge embedded into the program, that they might have some knowledge prior to whatever knowledge or program that you are intending to introduce or to assess them on. So we do what is called a pre-assessment verification. So you verify individuals' competency already before even you design the instrument, right? So it's very important. As an assessor, you need to do so for you to be able to conduct assessment in a proper way using the principles of assessment. So you can go read much more onto RPL process in the learner guide that is embedded into the material that is available from the learner resources on the portal, or you can send us a message, a WhatsApp or an email directly onto our official numbers 07835962000 or info@bbtinstitute.com or yusuf@bbtinstitute.com. I can gladly send you that learner guide so that you can be able to go through. The process of RPL is very important because number one, it aligns individuals onto lifelong learning. So those who are dragging behind can be all aligned onto the standards that have been set. Secondly, they lead to the acquisition of the right knowledge and skills that contributes to their performance either in the workplace or into the environment that they are intending to go into. Also, we look at the recognition of those individuals. Though they don't have a formal qualification to prove their competency, so we recognize those non-formal learning, knowledge that they have acquired, and then we assess it and align it to the standards that do give them a qualification or a skill or an award in any sort that represents or that describes their abilities to articulate in a given environment. The last part is to understand and demonstrate the principles of RPL, that the principles of RPL through assessment are exactly the same principles of assessment. So we shall go deeper to understand those concepts when we are looking at the principles of assessment. Remember, whoever needs to obtain a qualification through RPL must go through the process of RPL evaluation. All right. So this differs from institution to institution because every training provider, we know one of the criteria or one of the key documents that a training provider must have when they are implementing a program is what is called the assessment policy, right? I know most of you are doing training. You do have the assessment policy as part of the QMS, right? It's part of the quality management system. So you need to have the assessment policy. Within the assessment policy, of course, there is a part which demonstrates the concept of RPL, the concept of appeals, the concept of achievement or certification. So that whole document demonstrates and allows you as an assessor to be able to meet those requirements when you are conducting assessment, be it a skills program, be it a qualification, or any provider program that you might have been given to conduct assessment on. So that's how we look at the RPL. We focus more onto the learning that individuals has attained prior and the experience that they do have in an industry. So we can be able to align whatever they have onto the standards that have been set within a qualification or a program. Then we can conduct assessment. And then there is a full portfolio, which is called the RPL portfolio, that one needs to complete. That will include all the evidence to prove that indeed they have prior experience. They have the previous experience that they have obtained in their walk of life or whatever they've been performing duties as workers or as practitioners, whatever that describe that they do have the content and they are subject matter experts. So they need to just go through the process of RPL. You have to, of course, an institution will have to appoint you as an RPL assessor for you to conduct RPL. So there's a difference between an RPL assessment and the assessment of a normal qualification. Because with the RPL, every training provider needs to be registered as an RPL center. It means it is recognized by the sector or by a quality council to issue out or to take or undergo or take individuals through the RPL processes for their certification purpose, right? So that's how we normally categorize this in this aspect. So the process goes through lifelong learning, understanding and assessment of the knowledge and the skill that have been attained, looking at the formalization of one's informal information or knowledge experience into a formal award. And also we need to know that there are role players within the process of RPL. You alone you are not going to be the only sole individual that is going to conduct assessment on a person who needs to be assessed through the RPL process. However, you'll have support members, like we call them RPL advisors. We have got RPL moderators, RPL evaluators, RPL line managers. Who are these line managers? These are the evidences collected from the individual to prove that they've been performing duties somewhere else, or it could be their CV, the references that they have provided, or witnesses that they have provided. Those individuals, we use them, we use them as support, members or team to be able to score this individual on the RPL system. So you cannot work alone on this one, because you need the support. Otherwise, it will not be sufficient enough for you to do it by yourself. You need support members. An RPL advisor is a program designer or a curriculum developer who will advise you on the concepts of programs that needs to be RPL'd. And then the moderator will conduct moderations on whatever you have assessed as evidence produced by the candidate who needs to be RPL'd. Then the verifier, of course, comes from the quality councils or the sectors of education and training authorities, or anywhere where they need to verify that indeed whatever moderation has taken place, the reports do comply with the standards set by the industry. The line manager or the line manager are those references that have been given to us by the candidate to go and prove. So we visit the workplaces wherever they've been performing duties. We go and visit, or we make research, or we make inquiries to prove that indeed the candidate who's applying for RPL does meet the requirement, and indeed there is a track record of the experience that they have accumulated over a period of time. The witnesses also can be also identified, those who know the candidate, and they can witness that indeed they were aware, or they are aware of the past experience that this person does possess, and then they are able to give precise, correct information about the candidate. So we need those people. Otherwise, you might not be able to do it by yourself. Should an individual with so much experience, and you are assessing in a language that is not ideal for that candidate, you will need to have an interpreter. An interpreter literally will interpret whatever evidence or information that is being produced into the language that is more suitable for the candidate to understand and produce the evidence that you do require. We understand that so many of the RPL are those previously disadvantaged individuals. They have, maybe someone was working as a domestic worker for the past 20 years, right? But they never progressed in life. They stayed as domestic workers for the past 20 years. They've been working as domestic workers. So they don't have any formal qualification to prove, even if there's a new job to work in an office as an office now, or a cleaner, or as an office messenger. They have no track record of nothing to prove that they have knowledge of working with people, knowledge of communication, knowledge of identifying and solving problems. We use the critical crossroad outcome, of course, when we are conducting evaluations on the RPL in candidates. So what happens is that these people, they might not even know the language that is being used to conduct assessment on. Maybe they are Zulu speaking, or they are Sipedi, they speak Sipedi, they are Sutu. So what happens is that you need an interpreter that understands them, that will be able to interpret whatever you need them to do, so that they are able to produce such evidence. And this is key and very important as an assessor, because remember, you are judging someone's competency against a given standard. So if you are conducting those proceedings as a judge, you do not need to bias anybody because of a language barrier. One of the key information that we find in the policy that we have spoken about is called that assessment policy, which is called the language policy. The language policy is very key. For every training provider needs to have a language policy, because we have the individuals coming from different backgrounds. These people need to align to the language policy of the institution that you are working for or you are working with, so that assessment can be transparent. Assessment needs to be transparent. Otherwise, it would be a malpractice for you to bias some people and they don't get the right support that they need to exit a given program. So that's all about what we call the RPL process. Okay, should you want to know more about the RPL, please go and visit the learner guide. The resource guide is available into your learner resources on the portal. Download it and read more about that information. One of the assessment that we're going to give you is one of the specific outcomes and assessment criteria is actually to demonstrate an understanding of the RPL process. So you need to demonstrate an understanding of the RPL process. And also, one of the activities that you will do during the practical part is that you might need to actually assess someone through an RPL, through the RPL process. So that one also you need to put it into consideration, that you need this knowledge for you to be able to practice effectively as an assessor. All right, so I'm gonna pause here for a water break, and then when we commence again, we are going to understand the principles of assessment and then go deeper to look at some of the key concepts of specific assessment instruments that we are going to be working with, and then how to complete the evidence that is required of you for your certification purposes. Okay, so we have just a few minutes, 2 minutes water break, and then we're going to return quickly. All right, welcome back to the second session of our class. We are going to unpack right now the principles of assessment. Principles of assessment. Remember, these principles are the guidelines on how we as assessors need to practice. Okay, you need to practice using these criteria. Sometimes I know it's not easy to adhere to every single criteria, but you need to make sure, try your level best as an assessor to practice. Otherwise, whatever you do outside the principles, you are not doing it correctly, and you might be limiting the passing rate or the pass rate of specific individuals. Some might be biased, some might not feel comfortable. There's a lot of things that happens in the minds of the candidates or learners that you are conducting assessment on. And not only learners, also the students at large, the training provider themselves, as well as the design and development of learning program material, at the same time as well the facilitators who are using the assessment instruments that you have developed. Remember, you govern the entire flow of content and information, from the enrollment of an individual in a class to the exit of an individual out of the class. That is when they receive their certificate. You are part of them. So if you do not adhere to these principles, there might be some compromise one way or another, and it might affect the entire system. It's just like working as a chain value program, that every single part of your process adds value in the efficiency and the quality of education that you are supporting in a given organization. So when you look at the principles, the first principle actually that we normally talk about is what we call appropriate. An assessor needs to be appropriate, or the assessment needs to be appropriate. In what case are we talking about? That the method that you are going to give out must actually be coming from the outcomes of a program. In other words, you cannot assess something that is outside the scope of the objectives of the program. If you say that this program has got 10 specific outcomes, assess within the 10 specific outcomes. Don't assess something outside the 10 specific outcomes. Nobody will ever get such an assessment, because it's not meeting the objectives. The objectives to test individuals' ability to do something within the given scope. You might deviate one or another a little bit to increase learners' understanding and capabilities to think out of the box, but you are not actually moving further away from the objectives. Whatever deviation that you make is actually leading to meet or to achieve the objectives and the outcomes of the program. That's what we say appropriate assessment method. The method must be appropriate, and it is addressing the intended outcomes, not something else. Are we clear with that? Now, you're going to use this very assessment instrument or assessment principle when you are designing what is called an assessment plan. When you are developing your own assessment plan, one of the activities that you're going to do is to design and develop an assessment plan, or complete an assessment plan template. Because I know some people will say, but this program is not a design program. Yes, but we encourage everybody who's an assessor to learn how to design. There's the next program, which is 115755, is for design of assessment instruments. However, we encourage you to learn the design component as well, to add value onto the assessment program, because when you don't know how to design the instrument, it's going to be very difficult to actually to conduct assessment. Yes, this Unistanard is all about conducting assessment, but whatever you are going to use to conduct assessment, we call them the assessment instruments. Those instruments or tools that you are going to use to conduct assessment must be developed. Who does the development of those ones, and who tests that the development do meet the criteria and do meet the standards set, do meet the objectives or the outcomes of the program? It is you, the assessor. So you need to know anyway, in any way or another, you need to know how to use them. So if you know how to use them, you must be able to develop and design your own. The next one is all about fairness. We say the assessment that you are giving out must be fair, right? It doesn't bring or create or put any barriers of achievement to the learners. Individuals must not find it very difficult for them to get the required standards or to meet the objectives or to exit, to pass. Make it easy for them to go through, but not compromising the standards that have been set. All right. I remember when we used to, when I was in normal foundational schools, we used to have a mathematical educator, and you cannot, the test is given out of 100 and nobody gets, a specific pass mark. Nobody gets it and is proud of it. So no one can get 80% or 90%. No one will ever get 100% in my test. So for him, is proud that nobody can achieve, but that's not the need. That's not the objectives of assessing. Assessing is to make sure indeed individuals are able to exit and understand, exit and practice outside the learning environment. That's why we need to teach people the knowledge, the skills, and the attitude. In the workplace, the attitude part is the combination of the skills that one has acquired and then the CCFOs, the critical cross-field outcomes, to be able to allow them to practice that. Even if they are outside the learning environment, they have not crammed the information to pass a test, but they actually understand something and it flows in them, that even if they're not doing any test, they can be able to do work. So you don't have to produce individuals have certificates, but those certificates mean nothing because they cannot perform those duties or do anything, regardless of whether they have acquired a certificate or not. All right. So we need to assess them using the principle of fairness. The other one is all about manageability, that we say, please do not conduct assessment if you do not know how to calculate the effectiveness in terms of costing. Make it affordable for the training provider. Why do I say, in terms of assessment? Because remember, sometimes assessment requires to design and develop the instruments. Some instruments might need extra tools for them to be effective, to be efficient for usage. In other words, those who are doing practical programs, if let's say you are providing assessment and then the program that you are doing or delivering are actually practical programs, what happens is that those practical programs will need practical tools. So if you don't have the practical tools, it's going to be very difficult for the learners to achieve or to use or to exit the program. And in case that those practical tools needs to be purchased or sourced from somewhere and incurs some elements of costing, the provider must be aware of such, that okay, we need to purchase 1, 2, 3 things for this test or for this assignment or for this project or for this examination. We need to purchase 1, 2, 3 for the learners to be able to exit efficiently. So if you have not calculated very well, it becomes something that is going to be an inconvenience in terms of costing to the training provider or even to yourself. So try to manage, and the method that you are going to use must be in line with the learning program objective as well. Otherwise, sometimes you might design an instrument that is way out of the scope of the objectives or the outcomes of the program. The other principle that so we have a lot of principles. Validity is when the evidence focuses on the requirements laid down in a relevant unit standard. Do not assess something that is not being addressed into a program. The program must have its own objectives or the outcomes or the specific outcome if it's a unit standard. If it's a unit standard, we look at the specific outcomes and their respective assessment criteria. If it is a normal program, which is not aligned to anything, it means it must have the objectives of the program. Why do you have to facilitate or assess this program? What are the reasons? Those are the objectives. So whatever assessment that you are trying to come up with, it must be addressing those outcomes or objectives of the program. Currency is one of the key issues that we always look at, that the evidence must always be sufficient enough to prove that the candidate can perform through an assessment outcome at the time the assessor declares them competent. The information must remain current. Do not use historical evidence or historical assessment to conduct something that a learner must be able to go out there and practice. I have seen a lot of training providers and a lot of assessors, your examiners, so-called examiners, they go and savage through the past papers. They get a past paper which is maybe 10 years ago and bring it to use it as a current assessment instrument to give to the students. Word by word, nothing has ever changed. They take it and use it now. It's not valid. It is not current. It's historical. Information does change, guys. Information is changing every year, every day, every second. Things are changing. So you cannot assess using an historical assessment instrument. Try to amend your instrument. Even if you have got data from the past previous evidence, try to use it and amend it, customize it to talk to the current situations so that the learner can be able to apply. We are not in the era of Napoleon where you are going to talk about Napoleon and the French Revolution, right? We are talking about the current things that are happening because the student or the candidate is going to go out there and practice in the current environment, not in the historical environment. Unless we want to train people to become advocates, then in the advocates way, in the law school, that's where we people are being trained to go back and trace the previous cases and so that they can use them as evidence or as guideline to judge to pass on a judgment on the current situation. But also you can see that they rate from the previous one how it was handled and the current situation. Also the current situation will be able to to be tested. What is the consistency and the validity of the past and the current? Information does change. How the person is a reaction in the past and how about now, and all those things are put into consideration. So try to assess, to conduct, or to design instruments that are current. Do not take past papers and take it the way it was. You were facilitating last year and you have got the same. Let's say you're doing project management and you take the case study for project management you used 3 years ago and say you're going to use it now as a current project management assessment. You have not conducted any assessment in that regard. You are using an historical evidence that is not sufficient to prove competency to this current student, because you need to test them based on the currency of the environment that they are in now to be able to practice, right? So that's what happens if we deviate from the principles of assessment. I'm gonna pause here again for a water break, 1 minute water break, and then we shall continue. Today we gonna stay in the class a little bit longer because of the evidence that we need to unpack.
The class on or is the network? Class still on or maybe my network is weak?
Okay, we are going to continue. We are going to continue with our assessment principles. And I believe you are taking notes, or also you are going to be downloading such information from your portal. Please do so. Information is available. This information, you can download it directly from your portal, from the learner guide, or alternatively, you can actually get it through this video. As soon as it is uploaded, you'll get a copy of it. We have also other videos, guys, that you can access from our YouTube channel. Go and like our YouTube page, channel, subscribe, and also click onto that notification bell so that you can keep on receiving current information and current updates onto whatever video that we have dropped. All right, so we're gonna go forward and look at the other aspect, is called the authenticity. All right, authenticity of an assessment. Assessment must be authentic. The assessor is certified that indeed the evidence is attributable to the personal being assessed. Any individual being assessed must be the custodian of the evidence. In other words, if you are going to conduct assessment, the assessment instrument that you are going to use, make sure that they will indicate to a candidate that they are filling in if the individual that is required to complete that part is indeed the same individual that is being assessed. We have got a lot of malpractices where someone fills up information on behalf of the other person. So your assessment instrument must be able to detect authenticity, that indeed the information that is being completed, evidence that is being supplied or given by a candidate, is indeed the correct individual that has been enrolled into the program, not anybody else. Okay, so you must be able to come up with a template that addresses that part of authenticity. And there's also a declaration where the candidate must declare that this is their own work that they are producing. In most cases where it's a case study or projects or work that is done outside the learning environment or outside the classroom, right? Anything that is done outside the classroom environment, it means it's either a project or a case study. Make sure you are able to test such, right? Make sure you're able to test such. So your assessment must be able to pick up that indeed this work is done by this individual. Assessment must be sufficient. The evidence that is going to be allocated to a candidate to gather or to produce as evidence must be meeting the criteria that indeed the learner is able to exit the criteria or the outcomes. And after that, the learner must, or the candidate will be able to perform their normal obligation or duties, right, that is related to the completed assessment. An example, those who are doing practical programs like maybe forklift or operator lifting machine or crane, or when you train someone on operating a crane, let's say, or operating a vehicle, or operating a tailgate, those who are transporting things, offloading and loading of items, those are practicals. The person must be able to do it practically, and at the same time they must be able to do it even without being assessed. So the continuous assessment must be embedded into them, that as if they are being constantly monitored, but nobody is monitoring them. So it is all about you producing the right evidence that will bring sufficiency, that indeed whatever evidence that this candidate has produced meets the minimum requirements, and a learner can be able to perform to perform better, and the learner is consistent without deviating from the standards. That's what we call sufficiency. So you must be able, when you are designing these tools, the tools and the instrument, make sure that they bring in all the relevancy of the program, and the learner will be able to perform based on those outcomes efficiently, all right, and consistently. The last part is what when I talk about is the systematic. Here is the overall assessment, to make sure that the assessment is flowing in a systematic or in a consistent manner, whereby you are able to judge someone with fairness, effectiveness, and also you are able to repeat. If you are to remark, there will be no much deviation, right, from the first result that the person has received, because you are systematic, you are consistent, you are following the principles of assessment. So you can read more about assessment instruments. You can go and revise more. There's so many of these assessment instruments, so it's up to you to be able to gather such evidence and read more about it, right? So assessments must be open, that is transparent. Assessment must be open. In other words, you cannot assess something that is not within the program that you have given or that has been facilitated. Let it be within the learner's understanding. They have been attending classes. That's why an assessor, the first document that we ask when we go to conduct assessment is that, can we check, number one, the class list? Can we have the class list? Yes, here's a class list to indicate all the learners in that class. Number two, can we check, can we have the program outline, the program that has been facilitated on? Can we have the course material? That could be the program outline or the curriculum document of the program. Can we see the learner guide, that the learner received a learner instrument, that's their learner guide, that they were able to revise and do some work? And then can we see the assessment instrument that we are given out during learning? During learning, that's what we call upon the facilitation evaluation reports. So the facilitator must also give us the evaluation report and the facilitation tools. The tool from the facilitator includes, number one, the attendance register. Number two, the lesson plans. For every class that they have attended, there should be a lesson plan. A lot of facilitators don't do lesson plans. They just go and facilitate, right? So an assessor will be able to check that part, that indeed there's lessons that have been prepared, because every class is unique. Every class is unique, and it must be facilitated based on the understanding and the environment of those very learners. So you need to have a lesson plan for every class, and the assessment instruments are embedded in the lesson plan. So it means you are able to check the facilitators guide to know that what activities were given, are they in line with the same assessment instrument that were given to the learners, so that you can see that there is the matrix is corresponding to one another. Then you are able to know that where are the assessments and which days were the assessments given. Now you have to check the learner evidence that is being produced through either portfolio or a gathering of all evidences to prove that a learner did 1, 2, 3 assessments. That is the portfolio of evidence that you need to check, or anywhere where mark sheets that indicate the learners were assessed, and these are the evidences for each and every outcome that was given out. So it is an open process whereby everything must be laid out. For the accumulation of evidence, there must be openness, transparency, and consistency, right? Then the last one is actually consistency, the same thing, that makes sure that the judgment is in the similar circumstances, as if any other person can come and take up that judgment, or can take up and review the judgment. They will still come up to the same conclusion. Nothing will deviate, right? Nothing deviates. So you are reliable as an assessor, and you are consistent in your assessment practices, that every aspect of the tools that you have used, any other person can adopt them and use them, and the same results will be given. All right. So let us proceed quickly. And a quick review from day one. This is what we did. We demonstrated an understanding of NQF. So you need to go and read about NQF. Number two, we understood SACA, the South African Qualification Authority. You need to go and read extensively on SACA, how the programs are being designed, how the programs are being registered and recorded onto the SACA search engine. The quality councils, these are the quality assurers of the training providers, to make sure that there is consistency, compliance, as well as the quality of education given is of the standards. The qualifications, you need to check qualification that you are going to facilitate or assess. You need to know, and you're a subject matter expert for that. You cannot assess something that you have no idea about. So you need to know something on what you're going to assess on. You need to know. You need to have got the prior knowledge. You need to be a subject matter expert. The same applies to unit standards or skills program. You need to know that you are a subject matter expert into those fields. If you are a training provider, you need to be an accredited training provider. Don't assess for training providers who are not accredited. Rather, support them to become accredited before you can assess for them. So you might be invited and you find that the training provider is sharing an accreditation with someone else. I've seen those things where I've been invited by a training provider. Students needed qualification and certificates, but they didn't have accreditation, but they needed to make a little bit of money for themselves. So they go and partner with some other individuals. And you find that they are being biased because the other individuals are not able to support them to achieve their own accreditation. So all they have to pay an exorbitant amount of money for them to be supported. So which was, their agreement. I don't deny that their agreement, but it is not in line with the standards of operations. Every training provider needs to be an accredited training provider. So if you meet such a person or an institution, try to advise them and support them to go through the accreditation process first, right, before they can implement, because it's going to eliminate all the issues related to the cost that they are incurring to outsource things that they're supposed to do internally. Practitioners needs to be registered. Though, who are the practitioners? The assessors yourself, a facilitator, assessor, moderator. You need to be registered. More especially the assessors and moderators need to be registered with the relevant quality assuring bodies to make sure that there is compliance in the assessment processes that you are doing. Be a registered, or we call you a constituent assessor. A constituent assessor is someone who is registered against a program that they're intending to assess on. Then make sure you follow the principles of assessment. Now, I'm going to quickly go through. We're only looking at assessment at this moment, and we only have 3 forms of assessment that we're going to talk about. And we have been talking about them. The formative assessment is the assessment done during the learning process. Those are the case studies, projects, any work that you are doing as assignments, classroom exercises, all those put together. As long as they are done by the facilitator, we call them formative assessment. Then we've got the summative assessment, which is done at the end of a learning program or as part of the a module. Let's say you have a qualification, like nowadays we are using the QCTO programs. They are in module format. You find that one program has got 10 modules in the knowledge components, 15 in the practical, maybe 10 in the workplace based, but every module has got its own assessment criteria. Those are sometimes given as summative assessment. At the end of the module, there's a summative assessment. There's a summary of the test that describes the entire module. But then at the end of the qualification, we have what is called the integrated summative assessment, which is called nowadays the ISA. Okay, it forms of that is a form of assessment that is addressing the entire qualification as a whole, not merely just part of it, but as the entire qualification. So we call it the ISA. the external integrated summative assessment, and mostly now is being introduced to replace some of the assessment that were done previously through NAM. So the ESA is coming on board, and then it's actually being monitored by the quality assuring partners. We have the quality councils and the assuring partners. Those are the seaters of education and training authorities. They are monitoring that part. All right, so that's it. That's what we have to discuss about tonight, and then we have actually come to the end of this session. But before we can exit, I want to tell you now, you are all eligible to complete what is called the formative assessment knowledge questionnaire. Please go and complete the knowledge questionnaire, all right, in your learner portal, and then you'll be able to submit that evidence. You can download it, take your time to complete it. Then when we meet again on Saturday in the morning, remember we said every Saturday we have our summary of the qualifications, and to address every things that we have been talking about. So it's a summary, and it's also a portfolio building day. That's where we are building the portfolio on assessor. In most cases, every portfolio, either moderation, assessment, or facilitation, we build them on Saturday. So do not miss out our Saturday class that starts exactly at 9 o'clock. So we run it between 9 and 10. Do not miss out. But I'm gonna encourage you to meet a little bit earlier, right? On Saturday, we meet a little bit earlier to cover some of those portfolios. An invite will be sent out onto our learner portal. When you receive that invite, please come a little bit earlier, 8:30. Be ready to attend this wonderful session on portfolio building for your assessor class. Then when you're done, you'll be able to complete it on your own and then submit it as evidence. Next week, we are unpacking facilitation, right? Facilitation, and we're going to look at the methodologies. That's why we call it facilitate learning, using a variety of given methodologies. This is very dynamic, proactive, very interesting program. I don't want you to miss it. Those of you who have got appointments, please make sure you attend to this one first, and then you never regret why you attended this program. It will take you beyond the borders. Thank you, and see you again on Saturday from 8:30. Please let us make it like that. Normally class starts at 9 o'clock, but we want to start at 8:30, right, on Saturdays. See you, and let us keep in touch. God bless you.